Imagine walking up a tall, quiet mountain. This is what Jesus did one day. He didn't go alone. He chose 3 of his closest friends to come with him: Peter, James, and John. They were probably tired from the long walk, wondering why Jesus had brought them to such a secluded place. Mountains in stories of faith are often special places, locations where heaven seems to touch the earth. They are places of quiet, of prayer, and of powerful encounters with God. These 3 disciples were about to experience something they would never forget, a moment that would change how they saw their teacher forever. They were leaving the noise of the crowds behind to find a moment of peace and revelation. Suddenly, something incredible began to happen right before their eyes. Jesus started to change. His face began to shine with a brilliant light as bright and powerful as the sun. It wasn't just his face, his clothes also transformed. They became a dazzling white, whiter than anything they had ever seen, whiter than any bleach could ever make them. This was not just a simple change of clothes. This was a glimpse of Jesus' true, divine glory. For a brief moment, the disciples saw past the humble carpenter from Nazareth. They saw the King of Heaven in all his splendor, a sight so overwhelming it must have taken their breath away. It was a sacred unveiling, a preview of the glory that was always his. This was not a vision meant for everyone at that time. Jesus specifically chose Peter, James, and John, his inner circle, to witness this miracle. Why them? Perhaps they were the ones who would need this memory the most in the difficult days ahead. They would be leaders in the early church, and this powerful confirmation of Jesus' divinity would become an anchor for their faith. This moment was a gift, a special assurance given to strengthen them for the journey. It was a profound secret they were invited into, a holy memory that would sustain them through doubt and fear. Seeing Jesus in his heavenly form was a deep, personal encouragement just for them. The mountain itself was the perfect setting for such a divine event. Throughout history, high places have been where people went to meet with God. Moses received the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai. Elijah heard God's quiet whisper on Mount Horeb. A mountain lifts you away from the ordinary world below and brings you closer to the sky, closer to the heavens. For Peter, James, and John, this high peak became their own sacred space, a temporary sanctuary where the veil between heaven and earth was pulled back. They stood on holy ground, witnessing a miracle that connected the past, the present, and the glorious future, all in one breathtaking moment. As if the shining glory of Jesus wasn't enough, 2 other figures suddenly appeared. The disciples, looking on with wide eyes, recognized them. It was Moses and Elijah, 2 of the greatest heroes from the Old Testament. These men had lived hundreds of years earlier, yet here they were, standing on the mountain and talking with Jesus. Imagine the awe the disciples must have felt, seeing these legendary figures in person. Moses, the great lawgiver, and Elijah, the powerful prophet, were standing right there. This wasn't a dream. It was a real and powerful meeting, a bridge across centuries of God's unfolding story. The presence of these 2 men was deeply meaningful. Moses represented the law of God. He was the one who led God's people out of slavery and received the 10 Commandments on a mountain. His presence showed that Jesus was the fulfillment of all the laws and rules God had given. The law pointed out sin and showed people their need for a Savior. And here was that Savior, Jesus. Moses' appearance was a sign that the old way was now complete in the person of Christ. All the history, all the rules, all the ceremonies pointed to this one glorious moment on the mountain. Elijah, on the other hand, represented all the prophets. He was a courageous prophet who spoke God's truth and called people back to true worship. The prophets had long spoken of a coming Messiah, a chosen one who would save the world. Elijah's appearance next to Jesus was a powerful declaration that all those promises, all those ancient prophecies, were coming true in Jesus. He was the one they had all been waiting for. The conversation on the mountain confirmed that Jesus was the fulfillment of every hopeful word spoken by God's messengers throughout the ages. He was the answer to every promise. What were they talking about? The Bible tells us they spoke with Jesus about his departure, which he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem. They were talking about his upcoming suffering, death, and resurrection. This shows that the cross was not a tragic accident, but a planned, divine mission. Even in this moment of shining glory, the conversation was about the sacrifice that was necessary to save humanity. This heavenly meeting was also a moment of preparation and encouragement for Jesus himself, strengthening him for the difficult path that lay ahead. It connected his glory with his purpose to suffer and rise again for us all. Seeing all this glory was almost too much for Peter. He was so amazed and overwhelmed that he just had to say something. In his excitement, he made a suggestion. "Lord, it is good for us to be here," he said. "If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Peter wanted to hold on to this perfect moment, to build something permanent to honor this incredible vision. He wanted to stay on the mountaintop, where everything was glorious and clear. His reaction is so human. When we experience something beautiful, we never want it to end. He wanted to capture the glory and keep it there forever. But before Peter could even finish speaking, something else happened. A bright cloud came and enveloped them all. This wasn't a normal rain cloud, it was a cloud of God's presence, often called the Shekinah glory in the Old Testament. It was the same kind of cloud that had guided the Israelites in the desert. Being surrounded by this cloud must have been both terrifying and wonderful. It was a sign that God the Father himself was now present on the mountain. The disciples fell on their faces, filled with a holy fear. They had moved from watching a miracle to being right in the middle of it. From within that shining cloud, a voice spoke. It was the voice of God the Father, and his words were clear, powerful, and full of love. He said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." These were the most important words spoken that day. God himself was confirming who Jesus was. He was not just another prophet like Elijah or another lawgiver like Moses. He was God's one and only Son. The command was simple and direct. Listen to him. The time for listening to the law and the prophets was now fulfilled in listening to Jesus. His words were now the ultimate authority. This divine announcement left no room for doubt. It put everything into perspective. While Moses and Elijah were great servants of God, Jesus was in a category all by himself. He was the Son. The voice from the cloud was the ultimate endorsement, a heavenly coronation. After the voice spoke and the cloud lifted, the disciples looked up and saw no one but Jesus, standing alone. The vision was over, but its message was forever imprinted on their hearts. They had seen his glory and heard the Father's testimony. They now knew without a shadow of a doubt who they were following. After the vision ended and the voice fell silent, Jesus came to his terrified disciples and gently touched them. "Get up," he said. "Don't be afraid." His touch and his kind words brought them back from their fear and awe. The glorious light was gone, and the heavenly visitors had departed. It was just Jesus and his 3 friends on the mountain again. As they began their journey back down, Jesus gave them a specific instruction. He told them not to tell anyone what they had seen until after the Son of Man had been raised from the dead. This incredible secret was to be kept for a time, until the full story of his life, death, and resurrection could be understood. Coming down from the mountain was like returning to a different world. At the top, they had experienced heavenly glory, peace, and divine clarity. At the bottom, they were immediately confronted with the brokenness of everyday life. They found the other disciples arguing with a crowd because they had been unable to heal a boy who was suffering terribly. The contrast was stark and immediate. The mountaintop was a place of divine power, while the valley was a place of human struggle, doubt, and pain. This experience taught them that faith isn't meant to stay on the mountaintop. It must be brought down into the messy realities of the world. This powerful event was a turning point for Jesus and the disciples. For Jesus, it was a moment of divine confirmation before he began his final journey to Jerusalem and the cross. For the disciples, it was a memory of glory that would sustain them through the confusion and sorrow of his crucifixion. When they would see him suffering and humiliated, they could remember how they saw him shining like the sun. They would know that his suffering was part of a bigger divine plan. The Transfiguration was a promise of the final victory, a glimpse of the resurrection glory that would come after the darkness of the cross. The journey down the mountain is a lesson for all of us. We may have moments of incredible spiritual insight, times when we feel close to God and everything seems clear, but we cannot live on the mountaintop forever. We are called to bring that light and hope back down into our everyday lives, into our families, our work, and our communities. The disciples returned to the world, but they were not the same. They carried the memory of glory within them. The Transfiguration gave them the strength they needed to face what was next, knowing that the humble teacher they followed was truly the glorious Son of God.